In chapter 2 he wasn't too surprised, as he returned to the camp, by the sight of Dionysus hurriedly packing up his things, since it had seemed the god was all for escaping his duties. While I am more than happy to let you escape, I do hope you are at least going to wait until breakfast to tell the campers of the situation, he said as Dionysus looked up from his list of stuff he had to take with him. I'll handle that, don't worry. I'm not going to do anything that might result in me being pulled back here any longer than I need to, Dionysus said, as the sooner he could escape the better. Are you going to say goodbye to your children at least? How many do you have again? He asked, making Dionysus freeze for a moment before shaking his head. 2, and I can't. I've gotten my time here lengthened before for showing them too much attention, and as much as I want to, I'm not going to let my freedom to spend time with my wife again slip away, Dionysus said as Naruto could see the anger in Dionysus' eyes at being made to choose between either his wife or his kids. Relax, go say goodbye to your kids, Dionysus. I can shield the others from seeing into the camp whenever it is needed, so you can also visit your kids whenever you want as well, he said, while Dionysus just looked to him unsure. Why do this? Do you have kids or something? Dionysus asked, completely confused why the Primordial in front of him was acting like this. His entire life, even before becoming a god, he had figured out that gods didn't do anything unless they had something to gain, or if you had given them something first. I don't have kids, but you could say my students throughout the years are like my kids. I can only imagine how hard it is not to be able to at least tell your kids goodbye and that you'll be looking after them, Naruto said as he summoned a teapot and 3 glasses on the table. Bring them here and enjoy some time with them. I'll leave you 3 alone as I need to check on Sally and her son, he said while Dionysus nodded with a frown. Why? The wine god asked as Naruto turned back with a brow raised in confusion. Why what? Why allow you to see your children? He asked before Dionysus nodded. You get nothing out of it, and I was rather short with you to say the least when you first arrived, so why help me and allow me this? He asked, Naruto only smiling softly as he shrugged his shoulders. Why do I need anything out of it? Plus it is understandable that you were short as I did suddenly arrive. Chalk it up to a difference between Greek and Shinto pantheons for why I am doing this, but honestly I have always been one to help others when I see I can. Being powerful does not mean you have to act like everyone is below you, he finished before he left Dionysus to some alone time with his kids. As he entered the medic room he rose an eyebrow in confusion as he saw a blonde-haired girl attending to Percy, as Itaka was still in the same spot he had been in before he left. How have they been, Itaka? He asked as the girl just then noticed he arrived while Itaka closed the book he had been reading. Sally is stable as her injuries aren't too serious. A demigod from camp has come to heal Percy's wounds, although like Sally they don't seem to be very serious, Itaka said as Naruto nodded and smiled as he saw the girl look at him with widened eyes. Hello there, what is your name? He asked before the girl bowed to him. Annabeth Chase, the daughter of Athena, sir, Annabeth said as Naruto rose an eyebrow and put his hand on her shoulder to stop her from bowing. First, please no bowing, and second, there is no need to call me sir. Annabeth, please just call me Naruto, he said while she nodded, still a bit nervous, before he looked past her to see the ambrosia and nectar next to Percy's bed as well as the bandages that were applied to his wounds and some of Sally's. Thank you for looking after their wounds this much, he said as Annabeth nodded before frowning while she looked at him from where he sat beside Sally's bed. Who exactly are you? If that's okay to ask, Annabeth said as she quickly remembered the suffocating presence the man in front of her had when Dionysus had upset him. I'm not going to bite, so no need to be so afraid. I only acted like I did outside because this woman means so very much to me. As for who I am, if you promise not to tell any of the others just yet, I will tell you, he said as Annabeth nodded vigorously and moved over to his side, her Athena blood taking charge a bit as she wanted to know who this mysterious and powerful man was. Well, I come from a different pantheon and from a different world. You could say I'm the chaos of the Shinto pantheon, he said while he had to hold in a chuckle from the sight of the spark in the daughter of Athena's eyes from the millions of questions undoubtedly running through her head. I will explain more later when Dionysus makes his announcement, and if you still have questions I will answer them after, he said as Annabeth nodded, a bit put down that she couldn't ask her questions, but the promise of asking them later made up for it. You should probably go get ready as I figure breakfast will be starting soon, he said as the sun had started to rise up to signal just how early it still was. I guess I'll see you then, she said unsure as he nodded with a smile before she left the room, leaving him and Itaka with Sally and Percy. I'll wait outside so you may have some privacy. I should send a hawk back to tell the others where we ran off to and to check on how things went, Itaka said while Naruto nodded, his eyes still looking down at Sally while she rested. Good, and if you know who asks tell her she can come later, but only when I call her, since we don't need her rushing over instantly when things haven't been situated, he said as he knew if she was told where he was she would have rushed over near instantly. As proud he is of his first student, she was rather devout in terms of wanting to follow alongside him to be of use. I figure we can keep her away for about a day or two before she gets impatient. She might be a bit more impatient given how you had her deal with subduing my brother, Itaka said as he silently hoped his brother was still alive, despite how dark he had become. We'll deal with it when it happens, for now just send the message and see what they return, he said before Itaka nodded and left the room. As he looked down at Sally he couldn't help but smile, as even sleeping she was gorgeous, her age only making her beauty more mature. He knew how long he had been gone for, and considering it was for 25 years he wasn't surprised that she had a kid, though he figured Poseidon had gone about courting her like most of the Greek gods did. Which meant it was a whirlwind event that while he knew Poseidon hadn't forced himself on her, he didn't exactly let her have some time to have it settle in. Though he also knew that Sally didn't regret it, as she gained her son, someone she loved and who was fiercely protective of her. He smiled as he used his nature energy to heal whatever injuries she had before she started to stir in her sleep. Sally, wake up my dear goddess, he whispered in her ear with a smirk as he watched her open her eyes with a blush on her cheeks. It wasn't a dream. Why, you really are here, she whispered out as she reached out to touch his face and cup his cheek before he held it there with a smile. Of course I am, Sally, I promised I would return. I'm just sorry I took so long, he said as he had wanted to return to her side so much sooner, but annoyance after annoyance kept popping up. Wait, where's Percy? Is he okay? She asked, trying to sit up before he gently helped her up. It's okay, I brought you and Percy into the camp after dealing with the Minotaur. Percy is still asleep from his injuries, as you were the first I healed up, he said as Sally nodded and steadied herself. He though was surprised as she quickly turned and hugged him tightly before he frowned at the damp feeling of tears on his chest and quickly hugged her back. I'm sorry I made you wait so long, my love, he whispered before she shook her head. I am sorry I didn't go out searching for someone I don't care, Sally, he said, interrupting her apology she was about to make about having a fling with Poseidon. I told you to live, and 13 years is a long time to wait, so it is expected you had at least one fling. Whatever happened I don't care, because I will always have you in the end to myself. I would never let you slip from my fingers, he said with a smile as he gently moved her back so he could look in her eyes while he trailed his thumb over her lower lip. He couldn't hold himself back any longer as he leaned in and captured her lips with his and pulled her closer to his spot on the edge of the bed. As he deepened the kiss, slipping his tongue into her mouth before it was matched with her tongue, he quickly remembered again just how amazing Sally was. Something about her made him feel complete, like he had found the missing piece he had always been missing. He remembered this feeling the second he had seen her passing face that fateful day he had decided to visit an associate of his in New York, and how everything had frozen for him. He knew instantly this wasn't some little infatuation that he had had in the past, as being a primordial made you aware of bigger things. The second he saw Sally, every part of him screamed that she was deadly important, and the second he actually met her and they shared their first kiss he became that much more sure about it. It was the main reason why leaving her was so difficult, since he didn't want to leave her behind when she meant so much to him. As they pulled away from their kiss he couldn't help but smile as he rested his forehead against hers as she blushed and covered up her cheeks in embarrassment. Oh God, I must look terrible compared to how you last saw me. I have aged quite a lot since then, she said as she looked away, or tried to but couldn't due to their positions. Sally, you still look as stunningly beautiful as last I saw you, if not more so, he said as he found her embarrassed blush utterly adorable before she looked up at him. Really? Even my gray hairs? She asked as she fiddled with her hair before he nodded and held a lock of it in his fingers, moving his head back but staying beside her. Every bit of you, beautiful Sally. You being older won't change that, he said before Sally frowned and fiddled under the blanket, looking away from him as if nervous about something. What's wrong, Sally? He asked as she clenched her fists, holding 2 handfuls of blanket before she looked up at him. Is there a way for me to return to how old I was before you left? I want to regain the time I spent away from you. If anyone is to see me age or if I am to grow older with anyone, then I want it to be you, she said as Naruto tilted up her head. Are you sure? I honestly don't mind the older charm you have gained, he said as she nodded, a serious look in her eyes that always gave him a shiver down his spine. Sally always had a fire in her that showed that she knew what she wanted. Okay, I'll rewind you to 21, but when you become a goddess you know you can take the appearance of any age you want, so this will be temporary, he said as she still nodded. I want it to be like no time has lapsed since you left. I know it's somewhat selfish, but it makes me feel like you never left, she said while he chuckled and brushed her hair back to expose her forehead. So be it, my queen, he said before he kissed her forehead and her body flashed golden for a moment. As the light died down, her body had quickly changed. Gone were all the gray hairs of hers, and while her breasts had shrunk down from a high C to a more low C, she had figured all signs of any stretch marks from having birth were gone. Sally smiled as she looked up at him, about to say something before she stopped as her stomach growled so loudly that it caused her to close her mouth and blush in embarrassment. He chuckled though as he heard it before kissing the top of her head with a smile. I figure you are hungry after everything. The camp is having breakfast soon. His wounds aren't dangerous, but they have him tired out. Should I heal Percy and wake him up? He asked before Sally shook her head, frowning at her injured son. Let him sleep before you heal him, as it would most likely wake him up and he probably would like some rest after everything that has happened and been sprung on him. I can make him some food later, as right now after everything he needs rest more than anything since his wounds aren't dangerous, she said as she tried to get up off the bed before Naruto helped her. Though as she stood up she quickly had to grab her pants to keep them from falling due to her change in size. Here, let me help you with that, wouldn't want anything falling down in front of anyone, he said with a smirk, wanting to keep the side of her body to himself, before fixing her clothes and resizing them to her younger figure. Now don't worry about Percy, as a clone of mine will look after him, he said before summoning a shadow clone and letting her link her arm with his. So how about we head out to breakfast? After everything that happened to you, a good meal will do you good, he said as she nodded, casting a look towards Percy again before nodding as she trusted Naruto's clone. Ah, sensei, I just finished sending the message, and hello there Mrs. Jackson, Itaka said before bowing towards Sally, making her blush as someone bowing to her was entirely new. Oh, please don't bow and please just call me Sally. Gosh, this is embarrassing, Sally said as she knew Naruto was a primordial, but she never expected to be bowed to by others. If you wish, Sally. Do you want me to stay back with Percy and keep an eye on him? Itaki asked as Naruto rubbed his chin before nodding. If you don't mind, as the added security would ease Sally's mind, he said while Itaka nodded. I will see you after breakfast then, and Sally, it was a pleasure meeting you, Itaka said before he walked off, making Sally frown. I know he's a student of yours, but who was that? Sally asked while they walked out of the big house and towards the dining pavilion. That was Itaki Uchiha, he's one of my many students from my home world. I brought him with, as when you called I felt it would be best to bring help, he said, as it was either Itaka, Tsunade, or one of the members of the families that were tasked with looking after his sacred animals. Thank you for coming, Naruto, it really means so much that you came, she said as she hugged his arm close to her with a smile. And thank you for allowing me to enter here, as I feared I'd have to leave Percy behind when I brought him here, she added before he kissed the top of her head with a smile. Of course, I will always come to you when you are in need. I would never allow you to get hurt if I could help it. And I would never let you be split apart from Percy. He's your son and means a lot to you, he said as he laced his fingers with hers and held her hand softly. Plus you won't have to worry about that ever again, as after talking with the moderately annoying Greek council I am now in charge of this camp, he said with a chuckle as Sally looked up at him in shock. Really? Does that mean we will be staying here? Sally asked as she already decided to stay by Naruto's side, not wanting him to leave her again. If that is okay with you. I figured we could renovate the house however you want and Percy could even stay with us. This might be a bit hectic living here, but it is safe for Percy, and while I am here no monsters would dare try and push their way through, he said before Sally smiled happily and rested her head against his shoulder. That sounds wonderful, she said as they arrived at the pavilion before Naruto helped her sit down at the table both Chiron and Dionysus were seated at. Mrs. Jackson, it's great to see you up and about considering how you looked earlier today. My name is Chiron and I have had the pleasure of looking after your son, Chiron said as Sally smiled and nodded. Well, my injuries weren't that severe and thank you for looking after Percy. I think he often mentioned how much he liked your class whenever he came home for a visit, Sally said with a smile as Dionysus looked at her with a raised brow while his mouth was hidden by a can of Diet Coke. You made her younger, Dionysus bluntly stated, making Sally blush and Chiron look like he was about to bury his face in his hand. Yes, she wanted to return the age that she was when I had to leave her, Naruto said as he looped his arm around Sally's waist and pulled her closer to him, making her blush embarrassed before Naruto looked over at Dionysus. Also, don't you have an announcement to make? He asked as he moved the attention away from Sally, and the Greek god nodded with a groan. You're right. Sooner I get this over with the sooner I can leave, Dionysus said as his moment with his children seemingly made him forget for a while that he was free after this. Attention campers! Dionysus yelled, getting their attention as he stood up at the table. As of earlier today I am no longer your camp director, since thanks to this generous deity I am free from this burden. So after this meal I will be gone and he will be in charge. Chiron will still be here but I won't, he added with a laugh at the end before he sat down and Naruto stood up, holding up a hand to quiet down the whispers. I know you all have a lot of questions and if you have any please come and visit me if you want. My name is Naruto Otsutsuki and I am a Shinto primordial of creation, energy, nature, peace, honor, and oaths. I am technically the equivalent to chaos here considering we both created our own realms. I came here to save the woman that I love and after having to meet the gods I decided to look after the camp, he said as Sally nervously waved at the campers with a smile. I plan to train and look after you all like I have students of mine in the past in terms of making sure you can use what you have to protect yourself. I will also bringing students from my world to help, he said as the campers stared at him in awe before he sat back down and gave Sally's hand a reassuring squeeze that made her smile and squeeze back. Breakfast, after that, went a bit silently but well enough as once it finished Sally had decided it was time Percy woke up so she could talk to him and explain everything of the world he was a part of because of his father. Take your time, Sally, as Itaki and I will be getting the house situated. Plus I think a certain invisible daughter of Athena will keep me occupied for a while, he said before a squeak of surprise sounded out as he pulled of Annabeth's hat, revealing her to be standing nearby. Okay, but don't be occupied too long as I think Percy might want to talk to you later as well, Sally said with a giggle at the young girl's blush before entering the bedroom, leaving them alone. Well? Shall we head to the living room? I'll make us some tea as I can see you still have a million questions, Naruto said as Annabeth nodded and followed behind him and Itaka. So where do you want to start? Naruto asked as he summoned another kettle of tea and 3 more cups before pouring them all some to drink, which Annabeth accepted with a nod of thanks. Are you really the chaos of the Shinto pantheon? Because I've schemed through Shinto myths and your name never came up, she said as he chuckled and nodded. I am, as the thing you have to realize is that the Shinto myths in this realm are only of the few gods that have come over. Japan is more of a toehold that chaos allowed me to set up in this realm, he said as that only seemed to spark more ideas as he could see her mulling over her next question in her eyes before she turned to Itaka. Is he a god? She asked before Itaka shook his head. I am not, as I am only a student of his. He does occasionally make some of his students either gods or immortal if they want to after they have done something to earn it, Itaka said as Naruto nodded. Itaka is a loyal student of mine, hence why I brought him along when Sally called me over, he added before Annabeth nodded. Does that mean the woman you carried through is a goddess since she means so much to you? Plus I was sure she looked older earlier, Annabeth asked as he shook his head with a chuckle. She is mortal and I merely reverted her to the age she was before I left by her request. She is with her son right now, a demigod from the Greek pantheon. And before you try, please don't ask about the situation as it will be revealed in time and is rather private, he said, making her nervously nod and take another sip of her tea. As he continued to answer Annabeth's questions he couldn't help but smile and think how looking after the camp with Sally beside his side would go.